Function decomposition, as shown in the example previous to this, there's many different ways the question could be asked. You could simply be asked to just decompose the function yourself and come up with the two functions or more, because you could actually have several functions be composed together to come up with the same formula you have in h of x, as you see here. Or you could be asked questions like this, where you're given one of the two and you have to figure out what the other one is. Sometimes it's asked this way to keep you from choosing one of those trivial situations where your innermost function, which this case would be g of x, is not simply just x, which would make f of x just the same thing as h of x. So sometimes questions are asked like this in order for you to have to consider situations where you're not just taking the easy way out of it. So for instance, for this function here, h of x equaling x squared plus 5 over the square root of x squared plus 4, you know that h is f of g of x. This is a different way of saying it. G is the innermost function. So you know what the innermost function is. G of x is x squared. So what you want to do is consider the fact that, okay, well, the x squareds are appearing in a couple of places up here, which means that the original function f of x had to have spaces for those x squareds to basically slide into. And if g of x or x squared would be put into these two places, you would get this exact function. That means that the original function f of x had to have had x's in those places. So for this case here, f of x would equal x plus 5 over the square root of x plus 4. In a very similar fashion, for g of x equaling x squared plus 4, you can see the x squared plus 4 up here. In the top, you don't see an x squared plus 4 immediately appearing, but you could do some algebra manipulation to kind of make things appear that you need to have, as long as you're not doing some things where you're making assumptions that you really should not be making. X squared plus 5 can be thought of as x squared plus 4 plus 1. I really wouldn't need the parentheses there that way. The parentheses are just there to kind of emphasize the x squared plus 4 that you're looking to get. And so if I have an x squared plus 4 in that position being added by 1, and I have an x squared plus 4 underneath the square root sign, I would get this function, which means that the original function had to have spaces for the x squared plus 4 to go in these two positions here. Well, of course, being that that's f of x, those blank spaces would be x. So f of x in this case would be x plus 1 over the square root of x. In the opposite situation, if you're given the outer function and asked to find the inner function, this is a situation that I myself consider to be a little bit more easily done, because I know that these x's right here are going to become the blank spaces. And I want h of x to be something that's going to go in this blank space over the square root of something that's going to go in this blank space minus 1. Well, I want what's up here to be x squared plus 5, and I want what's down here to be x squared plus 4, and these two blank spaces need to be the same thing. That's the whole premise behind it. Well, for the top to be x squared plus 5, and now only have one blank space and nothing else happening to it, what's in here, it better be x squared plus 5. And it should be the same thing down here. I just have to make sure that I realize, okay, well, x squared plus 5 minus 1, is that x squared plus 4? It sure is. So the function is, for g of x is x squared plus 5. For d, again, I'm seeing x squared plus 1 over x. These x's are going to become the blank spaces I'm going to be putting g of x into. So I should have some blank space squared plus 1 over some blank space, and it should equal this up here. Notice the squared is part of the function f already, so I know that x squared is not going to be part of the situation down here necessarily. So I got to think, well, what in here is going to let me have x squared plus 5? And what's going to create a situation down here where I have the square root of x squared plus 4? Well, notice that the blank down here, there's no square root symbol there. There's nothing else there. So this blank space down here has to be the square root of x squared plus 4. And if I put that up here, I have to think, well, if I square that, I'm going to get x squared plus 4. X squared plus 4 plus 1 is x squared plus 5. This works out. And therefore, g of x would be the square root of x squared plus 4 in this instance.